right, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Particularly Innovative, the show where we dive deep into the world of DeFi. I'm joined here by Justin Bebis, the founder and CEO of Conclave and Ironclad, and we're here to talk about the future of DeFi and our exciting new partnership at Charged Particles. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Mr. Mango Dogwood.
Yeah.
Uh, Good name, but yeah, excited to talk.
Yeah, right on. So we'll start, just by talking a little bit about Ironclad, for anyone who might not be familiar with your protocol. So Ironclad is a lending and borrowing and lending protocol on the Mode network, but it's much more than that. You offer a bunch of different services from lending and borrowing to, collateralized debt positions. Can you give us a little bit of insight about your platform and your comprehensive approach and how it benefits users?
Sure, yeah. So there are kind of two prongs to our approach. There's one, being we want to be Mode's credit layer. If you're looking for a loan, whether it be synthetic or whether it be like real collateral, you can do it on Ironclad, and that will come in the form of starting this Friday, IUSD being our synthetic debt-backed dollar, or using a traditional kind of Aave style lend borrow experience. And that's side one, like the services side, and side two is or side two rather is the sustainability community go-to-market side, which is, staking, tokenomics, option tokens, things of that nature. And really kind of the ultimate goal is, how can we generate $1 of productive revenue or value for every $1 of emissions that we spend, and that is like a humongous effort that everybody in the DeFi business is trying to execute on. But with Ironclad, I think we have something really special, and we're getting very close.
Great. Yeah. Well, so I'd love to, dive into some of the things that, appear to be, very different than other platforms. Something, that I see on your site and in your docs is the concept of real yield. I'm wondering if you could, talk a bit about that and, how it differentiates you from, others in the DeFi space and, what that really means to you.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think like the real yield era, spurred on by GMX in kind of mid to late 2022, was one of my favorite times to operate in DeFi because people were thinking really hard about, what should DeFi be fundamentally? And in a world with a total absence of speculation, of investment, how can we turn DeFi into something that's really useful? And a lot of developers, ourselves included, worked really hard to build mechanisms that can close the feedback loop of value. And you look at the recent compound governance attack. The settlement there was as simple as, hey, turn on the freaking fee switch, and let users enjoy from the success of the platform. I don't know if that's grammatically correct, but we've really kind of taken that to a new level with Ironclad, and we see two problems with smaller projects like ours. Small being in the 8-figure range as opposed to the 9-10 figure range is one, it's hard to sustain dilution. So one of the most important parts of launching a token or launching a project is getting good distribution, getting as many tokens into the hands of as many people as possible. And what comes of that is community, it's buy-in, it's incentive alignment. And so what we do is we use something that was kind of invented by a mixture of Andre Cronje and Tapioca DAO. It's called an O token. So instead of emitting tokens, we emit something called an O token, and that is essentially a perpetual in the money call option that basically just gives you a 50% discount on ICL. And you know, initial thought is yes, we are emitting twice as many ICL, But what we're doing is we're getting a big bag of mode that we can use to incentivize stakers and deepen liquidity in the secondary market. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to get more and more and more tokens out there. So as kind of our incentive horizon moves down and moves down, the tokens we're emitting aren't quite as dilutive. And every single token that's exercised on the other end of that is a piece of collateral that is not denominated in our token that we can give to stakers or we can use for other kind of promotional programs. And that's all to say, like, in addition, borrow fees and fees for minting the stablecoin are also shared with stakers. And our mindset is literally like, hey, if we're going to ask people to um, take governmental ownership of a platform and help kind of steer it into the future, then they should have like a direct incentive to do so. And this isn't like novel or new, but I think with Ironclad, we're really taking a lot of these mechanics to a new level. And I think we've got some of the best, most compelling staking in the business. And we're just about to kick off. Right now, you get WETH and you get OICL, and we're about to kick off the USD emissions because our markets are doing quite well. So you can just hang out and earn some nice passive income.
Great. Yeah, yeah, lots to dive into there. You talked a little bit about, some of the innovation, of the early 2020s, and what those times required of DeFi to continue innovating. And you talked a little bit about mode and layer two and this sort of thing. So I would love to dive into some thought leadership. We'd come back as well to some of the other, unique elements of Ironclad, but maybe we could start, just broadly, like, what do you feel are the biggest challenges facing DeFi adoption right now as compared to 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of the same challenges, but framed a little bit differently. I mean, the security of DeFi, and I know that's like the most canned answer ever, but really, underwriters don't know what to do about DeFi, period. And sometimes talk to hedge funds and I talk to liquid funds, and I'm like, hey, like our team started off in 2020 as an Ethereum security team, like a DevSecOps team. We did a ton of consulting all over the place. And I would say we're one of the best operators of credit infrastructure in the business, period. Like we built Radiant Capital V2. We've operated these things for a long, long time. And I talk to these big liquidity providers, and the most disheartening thing is I get generally one of two answers. One, oh, we don't allocate to DeFi anymore. Because in 2021, what market makers used to do is take out huge TradFi loans at, interest rates were so low they could probably get credit at, 7 to 12% APR. And this might be totally like, incorrect. But they would basically arb DeFi rates and farm 50 to 100%. And then they started blowing up
Right.
and exploits started happening and prop traders and hedge funds started going under making these yield arbs. And now we're here in 2024, and I'll say like there are a lot of teams that have been weeded out. Like if you're not an elite security team or operationally excellent on that front, you can't really operate in DeFi, and people will sniff you out if you are. Um, and so, getting DeFi to the point where it's underwritable, and we can iterate. So answer number one is we don't allocate to DeFi. Answer number two is, oh, we only want a compound or an Aave fork. And we fork Aave, that's fine. But we kind of pride ourselves on our ability to iterate. And we pride ourselves on some of our upcoming technology, which is a lot more than simply Aave or Compound, and it's a turnoff for a lot of firms, and for a lot of capital allocators. So improving the underwritability, improving the security practices, and overall kind of getting investors or getting asset managers more comfortable with DeFi conceptually
Mhm.
is to me the biggest one. And number two, I think, is an optical thing. Like all of the biggest DeFi farmers pivoted to airdrops in probably like late 2023, and airdrop farming became a lot more profitable than farming DeFi with way less downside risk. And that's one of the reasons people really want the boilerplate forks, because they want minimal downside risk while they farm airdrops. Um, but I think like people need to start getting a little more serious about where is the product market fit, where is DeFi's kind of special sauce, and how are we actually going to beat TradFi? Because I feel like there aren't a lot of teams thinking about the long-term horizons.
Sure. Well, let's talk about some of those horizons as you see them then. Like, what are some of the emerging trends or technologies in DeFi that excite you, both like internally, as much as you are comfortable sharing, of course, and then as well just in the broader ecosystem, other innovators and teams that you think are doing it right or what they're doing at least.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, one of the big things we're tackling is risk and fragmentation. I mean, we're a lending team. We're really hyper focused on credit. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in perps. I think perps are maybe a year or two away from like decentralized perps being better than centralized perps. And we're going to see a lot of heat put on the Binances, OKXs, et cetera, of the world. Just looking at Hyperliquid, looking at Gains Network, a name you don't hear that often, but they're probably the closest to beating out TradFi. Um, I would say, our big things on the risk front are thinking about, why do financial crises or credit events, et cetera, happen? A lot of times they happen because credit is issued on top of some misperceived concept or context rather, or it's underwritten erroneously, or the balance sheet of your counterparty is unknown, and you're making so many assumptions in the underwriting process. And the funny thing is, like, if in the US at least, if you ever need a big loan, the hack is if you can get your accountant friend to just write a note that you have XYZ amount of money. I forget what that's called, but obviously it would be fraud if you lied, but fraud is what drives these big credit events. So we see, blockchain as obviously the ultimate solution to that, being you can audit every single block, any counterparty's reserves, any counterparty's goings on, and also the mechanics of a given system. You can't really fudge the accounting. You can see exactly what debt is inside of a collateral reserve. You can see exactly kind of who your creditors are. Um, and so what our team has been doing is we've been thinking really hard about how can we extend these transactional pipelines and secure and make auditable these transactional pipelines, being, we were kind of big innovators in the world of rehypothecation in 2022 through our platform Ethos Reserve. We got carry traded to hell, but we're relaunching it fairly soon. And what we found was that if you take a typical lending platform, and there's not a lot of borrow side demand for as much capital as there is in DeFi, there's not a ton of people wanting to borrow it necessarily at all times. And rates are very competitive, and you eventually kind of hit a brick wall. Um, and the concept of the risk-free rate in DeFi, I mean, it's basically like, okay, Aave lend side, as long as, in a post-curve world, Aave lend side, I guess. And maybe that's speaking a little too soon, but curve, when I say curve, I mean the CRV
Yeah.
bad debt disaster. But we've been thinking about, can we rehypothecate unutilized assets or unborrowed assets and earn? And if you look at the scale of DeFi at the highest level, being, let's say Aave $20 billion, the unutilized asset pool is maybe, five, or not five rather, but like 20 to 30% of any given pool. And, you don't need on a $20 billion capital base, 20 to 30% of those assets in reserve. Especially when there's the opportunity to rehypothecate to a fully liquid, super low risk position. Obviously, like me saying that now and that statement being underwritable and being acceptable, though that's a long ways apart. But talking about that and then talking about extending these transactions, even further composability wise, and being able to extend lines of credit to other platforms kind of within an ecosystem. So on the stablecoin end, we really like concepts like GHO, like DOLA, wherein, or like Frax, the pioneer, obviously, wherein teams can kind of issue stable coins into other lending platforms or issue stable coins into LPs, which is much more difficult, obviously, and thus lower cost of capital on average for everyone. If you're a stablecoin issuer, liquidity is the biggest cost by far. And Frax just kind of solved that. They were like, we're just going to turn this LP into a price stability module. If you're familiar with MakerDAO's PSM, wherein essentially it's just backed by the counter assets in the LP. And now you have a really healthy ecosystem with really deep liquidity that doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. I kind of like rounded a bunch of bases. I don't even remember where I started, but on that end and on the fragmentation end, like Ironclad is an expression of our tech stack. And if you look at our front end and you notice, wow, that looks like an engineer designed it. That looks a little simple. It's because we rebuilt the entire DeFi front end and back end stack to scale like an SaaS company. So if you look at Ironclad, and it'll get much prettier, we have a UI UX redesign in the works, but essentially like we can create a platform as rich as Ironclad with the credit layer, with the CDP, with the lending layer, with all the tokenomics, et cetera, in an afternoon. And we can hook it up to totally custom data sets. We can kind of forge the path in that way. And, we feel that retail doesn't have access to a lot of good opportunities. You have one of two options if you're a retail farmer. Either one, you accept like a lower rate and you just farm on a platform and dump everything you can and hope you get out before the whale is done, with his business there. Or you just buy like the network token and you accept like, that there's zero alpha there. Or there is alpha there, but it's like, generally overvalued. If you look at ARB, nobody wants to buy something at that insane valuation and get dumped on by VCs. So, what we think our place in the market is like, hey, we want to create, sane and sensible opportunities for everyday people. We don't want insane valuations. We want to grow organically. We care about community. We care about people, but we want to give participants, and this alienates inherently some hedge funds or some, whales or whatever, because we're not just, hey, we're going to exist for 3 months, give you huge ROI, and then, shutter it. So long time horizons, good outcomes, et cetera, with the security you can expect from a top tier team. And that I think is really important to us. So, it's like we want to be the absolute best platform for someone with, a $500,000 portfolio or a $100,000 portfolio or a $10,000 portfolio or a $1,000 portfolio. I don't want to alienate anybody, but we can be the best platform humanly possible for them, at the cost of maybe the 10 million, $100 million portfolio guy,
Mhm.
and then create a totally nice insular ecosystem that can grow naturally and maybe even grow eventually to suit the needs of those larger players. But Yeah, we just want to make opportunity and we want to do it in a way that's really secure, really safe. And we want people to onboard and we want to be able to teach them
Mhm.
like what's going on? What are these mechanics? Why is this the future? Why is it important?
Yeah, well, it sounds like, we agree in that accessibility is important, but, the accessibility for the hedge fund is maybe a little different than the accessibility for the person with the $1,000 portfolio, but both are important. And, it's sort of a chicken and an egg in terms of who arrives first and, who follows, I suppose. But, this is something, we're really focused on, the small guy, grandma who doesn't know anything about, traditional finance, let alone DeFi, but someone's trying to help them get involved in, in blockchain and in decentralized finance. And, and so onboarding and accessibility are something that we're quite interested in that there are so many platforms, that you've just named in a single answer. And how could you possibly, learn all of these things, especially if you've just downloaded MetaMask for the first time, which is the impetus for Web3 packs, utilizing NFTs as a container, that you can bundle all these different assets and get exposure to loads of different platforms across an ecosystem, such as Mode,
Yeah.
whether that's, just ERC20s or if it's liquidity positions. And, we're really excited that Ironclad will be one of the tokens in our debut pack here on Mode. But accessibility and onboarding being the key feature of that, just in one click being able to get exposure to lots of these things, even if you're new,
Yeah.
and if you are an advanced DeFi user, being able to expose yourself to lots of different platforms at once. And it's our hope as well that such a thing will mean that we kind of lateralize stability along a lot of these different pools and tokens, and it's another layer of sort of locking all that value in. um, yeah, so one word I noticed you use in your answer, and I've seen on the website, on the UI you talk about it, is forging, these new innovations. I wonder if we could talk a little bit more about that. There's really like a gamification and this kind of imagery and
Yeah.
gameplay element to your UI. Could you talk a little bit about the forging and the forge master concept and on
Yeah.
ideas?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing we found is that, it's kind of fun to just LARP, while you're going through the like managing finance is inherently boring.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. It's a little bit stressful, and it can be really annoying, to be honest. And we find that having a little bit of fun, having a little bit of narrative, even when it's cringe, like especially like if you're in your late 20s, if you're past the horizon of being cool in your 30s, 40s, it's like it's fun to just immerse yourself in like kind of a nice little LARP once in a while. And we think that weaving these themes together also helps with the learning process.
Mhm.
So we're kind of creating at the root like these really strong analogs. And if when you're communicating to a VC or someone who knows everything, or like a colleague, you can use all the technical jargon to describe, oh, the convexity of this position, or describe, the interest rates, or all these different mechanics that go into it. But the average user has no idea. So what we're doing is we're trying to reinforce a lot of these concepts using analogs that tie into a greater narrative. And it's some people may laugh at it, but it's fun if you join the Discord. And I think it adds a little bit of lightheartedness to something that's inherently quite serious. And I think finding that balance between, hey, like, I live and die by our users' safety and security. Balancing that with, also I want our users to have a good time. And if they were to inherit the amount of like I don't know what the word is, like levity, or the amount of weight I place on their safety, then they would have a really shitty time. They would need to spend a few years adapting to that stress. But we try to find a good balance uh, Yeah, it's maybe a little impossible and maybe evolves week over week, but
Mhm.
we want to be at least somewhat approachable.
Sure. Well, maybe that's a great sort of way to wrap this up, for anyone who maybe is newer to DeFi and has made it so far through the alphabet soup of some of these really, technical answers, or just in general for just someone who's newer to it. What kind of advice would you give to someone getting started in DeFi, or what would you say about DeFi for someone who's kind of just entering this space, and why it's so important to you, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think the really important thing is that DeFi is very sincerely solving the biggest economic problems in the world, being, the auditability and transparency of finance. And beyond that, DeFi and blockchain can scale that security and that auditability and that transparency to a degree that TradFi couldn't in a million years. And I think like if you're DeFi curious, there is, no point too early. Like it's difficult right now, but there will be a time where, there may be, and I don't want to be like a doomer. I think, the finance industry is good at staying alive, but there may be a time where you might need to onboard your mom to DeFi. You might need to kind of strap yourself up and strap your family up with some of these uncorrelated assets. Not saying there's a worst case apocalypse scenario, whatever, but like diversifying into assets that are global and diversifying into assets that are uncorrelated with traditional markets will become increasingly important. And we see it already becoming increasingly important. And I guess like maybe in terms of execution, get into a Discord with a team like ours. There are a lot of good teams that will be very helpful. I'm obviously biased toward my own team, but ask for advice. Tell them, hey, I have these assets. I want to get started in DeFi. I'm scared of this, that, the other. I'm nervous about this, that, the other. And all of us have been through it. And we're here to help. I'm sure Mr. Mango Dogwood would help you into the ultimate pack that suits your risk profile. And just start to diversify and start to think really hard about what the future of finance will look like. And I promise you it won't look like a bunch of IBM mainframes and COBOL infrastructure and weird duct tape APIs that keep everything together. It will probably look a lot like the Ethereum network. So get used to it. And I'll tell you from an engineering perspective, like DeFi is happening. It might take a little while, but it's just too efficient and it's too secure and it's too reliable, ignoring outlier cases. To not be the ultimate standard for finance in the future.
Well, thank you so much, Justin, for your time today. It's been very insightful, and I hope our people watching have learned a few things. We're really excited for our partnership, and to see you guys grow in the mode ecosystem and beyond. And so, yeah, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the time. It was a lot of fun, and feel free to reach out if you or your users need any help.
Right on. All right. Thank you.
Okay.